Imagine you're in a crowded room, and you see someone storm out after a brief conversation. What's your first thought? Did you assume they were angry or upset? Hold that thought as we dive into why our brains love to jump to conclusions, and how this habit might be steering us wrong more often than not. Welcome to today's eye-opening journey, where we explore the danger of jumping to conclusions, how to avoid assumptions. Let's tackle how you can recognize when you're jumping to conclusions in your own thinking. You've just met someone, and based on the first thing they say, you've already labeled them in your mind. This, folks, is a classic sign you're jumping to conclusions. But why do we do this? It's our brain's way of quickly making sense of the world, yet it's not always accurate. Now, what can we do about it? Before reacting, take a moment. This simple action can save you from embarrassment and misunderstanding. The next time you catch yourself making a snap judgment, ask yourself, do I have all the facts? Let's discuss some practical strategies for avoiding making assumptions. Imagine you're working on a group project, and one member isn't contributing much. Instead of concluding they're lazy, consider alternate scenarios. Maybe they're overwhelmed or unsure how to help. Here, communication is key. Approach them with openness. Hey, I've noticed you've been quiet during the project. How can we assist you? Now, why is it so hard for us to not jump to conclusions? Our brains love shortcuts, folks, and jumping to conclusions is a mental shortcut. But just like detours can lead us astray, so can mental shortcuts. Being aware is the first step. Acknowledge that your brain might be taking a shortcut and actively choose a different path. So, how can we train ourselves to overcome this? Practice, practice, practice. Challenge your assumptions. When you feel certain about someone's motives, ask yourself, could there be another explanation? Engage in active listening. This doesn't just mean hearing the words, but truly processing what's being said without judgment. And remember, assumptions can not only affect our own peace of mind, but can significantly impact our relationships with others. How can I recognize when I'm jumping to conclusions in my own thinking? Let's start with a common scenario. Imagine you text a friend and don't receive a reply for hours. Your first thought might be, they're ignoring me. But is that the reality? Jumping to conclusions is a mental shortcut. It's our brain's way of quickly making sense of a situation without gathering all the evidence. Now, let's break down the types of conclusions we often jump to. First, there's mind reading. This is when we assume we know what others are thinking, like in the text message example. Next, we have fortune telling. This is when we predict the future negatively without any real evidence. For instance, believing you'll fail an exam despite studying hard. But how can you catch yourself in the act? Here's a step-by-step guide. First, pay attention to your immediate thoughts and situations. When you sense negativity, pause. Ask yourself, do I have all the facts to back this up? More often than not, you'll find you're working with incomplete information. Consider alternative explanations. Maybe your friend's phone died, or they're dealing with a personal issue. Reflect on past experiences. How often have your snap judgments been accurate? Chances are not very. Discuss your thoughts with someone else. A different perspective can reveal holes in your conclusion. Lastly, practice mindfulness. Staying present helps you navigate thoughts without getting swept away by them. Here are real-life stories to illustrate. Meet Alex, who almost ruined a friendship by assuming a canceled plan meant disinterest. It turned out his friend was dealing with a family emergency. Then there's Sam, who was convinced she'd never succeed in her career. A mentor helped her see that she was underestimating her abilities. Both learned to step back and assess their thoughts critically. What are some practical strategies or techniques for avoiding making assumptions in various situations? Let's start with a simple yet powerful strategy: active listening. Active listening involves fully concentrating on what is being said rather than just passively hearing the message. It means when someone is talking, you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're really taking in their words, their tone, and their body language. Next up, ask questions. Asking questions is a foolproof way to avoid making assumptions. If you're unsure about something, just ask. This demonstrates not only your interest, but also your willingness to understand the situation completely. Ever heard of the phrase, put yourself in their shoes? Empathy plays a massive role in avoiding assumptions. Try to understand where the other person is coming from. Why might they think or feel a certain way? This perspective can drastically change how you view situations and interactions. Don't forget about the importance of verification. If you're given information, especially if it's secondhand, make sure to verify it for yourself. A quick fact check can save you from numerous misunderstandings and assumptions. Consider cultural differences. What's normal in one culture can be completely misunderstood in another. Being aware of these differences can prevent a lot of incorrect assumptions. Have you heard of the ladder of inference? It's a model that describes the process we go through, often unconsciously, to get from a fact to a decision or action. Understanding this ladder can help you identify where you might be jumping to conclusions too quickly. Let's talk about the power of reflection. Before jumping to conclusions or making an assumption, take a moment to reflect. Why are you thinking this way? Is there evidence supporting your assumption? Reflecting can help slow down the assumption-making process. Now, how about we look at some examples? Imagine you're a project manager and a team member hasn't delivered their part of the project on time. Instead of assuming they're lazy or not committed, consider other possibilities. Maybe they didn't understand the task or faced unforeseen personal issues. Applying these strategies in real-life scenarios like this can make a huge difference. Visualize a world where, in personal relationships, we don't assume our partner knows what we're thinking or feeling. Communicating clearly, asking for what we need, and actively listening can enrich relationships tremendously. Remember, the goal is not to never make assumptions. As humans, it's almost a natural process. But by being more mindful and applying these strategies, we can significantly reduce misunderstandings and conflicts. Why is it so challenging for humans to resist the urge to jump to conclusions? And how can we train ourselves to overcome this tendency? Why is it that, as humans, our first instinct is to fill in the blanks, even with little to no evidence? It turns out this tendency is wired deep into our brains, a remnant from our days in the wild where snap judgments could mean the difference between life and death. But in today's complex world, this instinct can lead us astray more often than not. Let's explore this further. First off, our brains love efficiency. Processing information and making decisions requires energy, and jumping to conclusions is a shortcut that saves mental resources. Imagine if you had to thoroughly analyze every single decision you make in a day. Exhausting, right? But while this mechanism serves us well in routine tasks, it can lead to errors in judgment when we face more complex situations. One classic example is the halo effect, where our overall impression of a person influences how we feel and think about their character. Think back to a time when you met someone who was incredibly charming and well-dressed. Did you find yourself assuming they were also smart, successful, and trustworthy? So how can we combat this natural tendency? First, awareness is key. Knowing that you're prone to jump to conclusions is the first step in changing that behavior. Next, practice slowing down your thought process. When you catch yourself making an assumption, take a step back and ask yourself, what evidence do I have to support this? Seek out more information before forming a conclusion. Another powerful tool is to challenge your assumptions. Ask yourself, what if the opposite were true? This can open up new perspectives and prevent you from locking into a single viewpoint. Let's try applying these strategies to a real-life scenario. You receive an email from a colleague that seems curt, and you immediately think they're angry with you. Instead of jumping to conclusions, you pause and consider other possibilities. Maybe they're just busy or having a bad day. You decide to ask for clarification in the follow-up message, clearing up the misunderstanding without any hurt feelings. Cultivating curiosity is also vital. Instead of settling on the first explanation that comes to mind, ask more questions. Curiosity leads to a deeper understanding of the world around us and helps to break the cycle of snap judgments. Remember, the road to understanding is paved with questions, not assumptions. And the next time you find yourself about to leap to a conclusion, take a moment, pause, ponder, and proceed with curiosity. If you found this video helpful, give it a like. Share it with friends who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Together, let's become better thinkers, communicators, and ultimately, friends and neighbors in this puzzle we call life. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.